No theme songs, no show tunes, no sad tales, no credits. It's just Wednesday, folks. It's time for the Mattriarchy. I don't think I even shared the link to this out anywhere.
Whoops.
So I don't know who will be getting notifications or who might be showing up later. I brand new. Here's the story. I'll tell you guys. Brand new computer, which means that I haven't signed back into everything yet. So like, I can't even get onto my Twitter yet. I haven't even. I don't remember my password, so I don't know what that'll be. So yeah. So who knows? I don't think I even have the thing for Discord even. Let's see.
I'll start posting to YouTube.
Nope. It's nothing.
I didn't even know you're on Discord.
Wait, are you saying
we aren't friends on Discord? We got to fix that.
Yeah, well, I think I'm in your chat, your server.
Oh, okay, good.
But yeah, we might not be friends per se, but I think I'm in your server.
Well, we should be. I'll have to get you. I'll double check that.
That out.
Okay. By the way, hi.
Oh, hey, yeah.
And say hi to Cartoonicus above. Yeah.
Stay tuned.
Yeah, we're just doing a chill stream. We're random topics, nothing. No big grand theme, so to speak.
Well, yeah, we're just hanging, and the biggest reason for that is because I'm disorganized. I'm a mess. No, this is the second day, since I've only had one job in the last several weeks. So, I am just now easing into some resemblance of a normal life. So, it looks like there are some people that are tuned in. So if you guys want to jump in the chat, you'd be welcome to. We can have that. But yeah, I didn't have anything. I wanted to get back on today. I want to get back on the horse, but I have not had time to put anything deep together or whatever. I'm just working the cobwebs out of the new computer. I got a new budget mouse. It's teal. You can't really tell.
Mm-hmm.
It's teal.
Yeah,
but it would cost me like the mouse keyboard combo were on sale for $10. So I'm like, I ain't so proud. I'd save $15 on a keyboard mouse combo. Since I spent way too much on the computer itself.
I am waiting to get a new computer because every time I get close to having the money, something comes up. And eats up a couple thousand. And several years ago, I went into Best Buy on Black Friday, didn't do any research. And I said, look, I need to get a laptop for streaming. I'm going to be doing streaming. I'm going to be playing games and streaming the games and commenting. And they're like, okay. And they show me this laptop, says, this is the one you want. Okay. And after half a year of struggle trying to get everything going, I finally call the Dell, and they're like, yeah, that computer's not going to work for streaming. Well, I don't know what they were telling you. It's like, so, and that's after, unlike you, I had moved everything to my laptop. This is why I never respond to email. My email is only on my laptop that I never use. So I need to get a new computer and move everything onto that one thing and get off the old computer and get off my laptop. And
oh man, that's frustrating.
Yeah, so I'm working on living on two for a while. So I hope to be where you are, where I'm navigating everything to the new computer.
Yeah, and I had a so yeah, I'm pretty happy so far with it. I'm just barely getting it set up. Yesterday I installed the art programs that I use on the regular for making comics. I haven't tried using them at all yet, so we'll see how that works. I feel like I should be really anxious to get back to work on stuff because the last month has been really disruptive for me, but I also don't want to.
I'm anxious to talk about Wonder Woman again, so we got to get that that
Yeah.
next installment. It's probably been about a month since the last one.
That's
So
true.
anything
That's
else, Jeff?
true. Maybe we can lure Twitless back for that. So we'll just have to see how
I
that
don't know.
shakes.
He might have just given up on that one after the last stream.
that's true. But we've got a major plot event happening in the next few issues. So I want to get to that. So and then we can abandon it if we want. But I got to talk about the thing that they did. So
Yeah, that drove me absolutely crazy.
the thing we're not talking about yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
Okay.
thing I've been not talking about for like 6 months now.
Fair. No, it can't possibly be 6. It can at the most 4.
It's kind of like when the Red Wedding aired on Game of Thrones, and everybody is talking about it, and then JR, or whatever his name is, the writer said, "Now you know why all of your book reading friends were really upset 12 years ago." whatever it was. It was like a decade ago they were really upset. Now you know why, finally.
Yeah. So to answer the question in the chat there, Colin, we're not necessarily chilling with comics, just kind of generally about it a little bit, because I don't feel like being overly directed. I did get up on a ladder yesterday and clean up my gutters. I'm really happy about that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That's one of the nicest things about this new job is that I am done every day before 6, guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so that's one of the things, like there's no more me getting in from Sydney at 9:00 at night some days just because. And so I'm looking forward to that. Definitely looking forward to that. But that does mean that I might actually be able to make a creative works schedule so that I can actually keep on the comic train on a more even keel and production that's more dependable and predictable. So,
okay,
which I am hoping for. I've got several projects that are just out in the ether. I think we may be able to bring into something there. So,
okay.
yeah.
Have
Welcome
you
to the
seen
Mattriarchy, folks, where we talk about gutter cleaning and comics we're not talking about.
Right. Have you seen the Captain America movie that came out last month?
Oh no. I have
Neither did
negative
I.
interest in that.
Yeah. I actually like Mackie, the actor. I like the character of Falcon. I don't think he should have become Captain America. He should have stayed Falcon.
Well, and
But
here's the thing.
if they do
I
make him
get that
Captain
he
America,
became
he should
Captain
be
America in
Captain
the
America with the
comics.
powers, you know? He should have
Yeah.
power, and he doesn't.
Well, and here's the thing I never understood about this whole deal. And Marvel went back to it because, like, the thing is when they did the Sam Cap thing,
Mhm.
the Captain Falcon thing in the comics, right? Sales on Captain America, which were not stellar, but they were sustainable, they tanked, right?
Yeah.
When Brubaker left the series, and
Are you referring to him taking over, or when he first arrived in the Captain America comics way back?
No, when he took over.
Okay.
Yeah, no, people loved Sam Wilson. People have loved the Falcon. Like normies don't know this, but like the Falcon had like a very stable following for a C-tier character. And at one point he was even the head of the Avengers, if I remember right. So it was one of those things where people have always loved Sam Wilson. And so Brubaker had done a thing where he got a writing on Captain America, and he reinvigorated Bucky and made you care about him. And this was a work. I don't know if you guys were following Captain America back in the early 2000s or not.
No.
But I was. And there was a Captain America. What was that line? The Marvel Max. Just after they ended Marvel Max as an imprint, they did several of those series. They spun off into Marvel stories that were in the main continuity, but were more hard edged. A new Punisher series that came out, and they had the first I can't remember what it was, but they did Captain America. That was the same one, and it was a more serious Captain America. It was supposed to be anyway. And that's when I started getting back into the series, and I picked it up, and then they Mark Waid came on the series and was just doing awesome stuff. I really enjoyed it, and then Brubaker finished up. I got into he and Darwin Cook's Catwoman series, and oh my gosh, that was so good. And so when Brubaker wrapped up his run on Catwoman, well, two things happened because Cook left before Brubaker did. Total sidetrack, but the thing I loved about Brubaker's Catwoman series was they did such a great homage to the whole noir thing that's always been subtextual to Batman's like little pocket of the universe. But because Brubaker was dealing with B and C and D list characters, he could just go hard nosed into that, and it felt good and gritty, like reading a Saint novel. I just loved it, and it was Bat adjacent, and Batman showed up every once and again, and it gave this different look on Selena where she got to be kind of an anti-hero, and that was really fun. And I loved Darwin Cook's costume for Catwoman that they did, because it was sexy but not exploitative. And like was that the
leather with the goggles?
Yeah, it was a leather jacket with the goggles, and
yeah,
it was one of these things where like I, as a early 20s single man, did not feel guilty for going and buying Catwoman on the regular. And if somebody saw me reading it at the coffee shop, I didn't have to wonder whether they thought I was reading a porno,
As you did with Jim Balent.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Jim Balent's crazy good artist.
Yeah.
But this is practically nude. Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. And it looks like the main thing she's smuggling is, soccer balls in her costume. And, yeah. She doesn't steal diamonds anymore.
She's stealing cassava melons. Anyway.
Yeah. But so, there's an embarrassment to reading that in a coffee shop in front of other people.
Exactly.
And not with, okay, I got you.
So I'm reading this, and in the course of reading Catwoman, actually, I ended up getting married. And so that's a fun story. Anyway, the point is, though,
that got you married?
No, it just happened at the same time.
Oh, okay.
It was coincidental.
Okay.
So I'm sitting there and I'm buying Catwoman on the regular, whatever, bringing it home. And after Cook left, they found another artist that was able to get the same kind of visual style, and I can't remember that guy's name, but it wasn't as like sleek lines as Cook's, but it still had the same kind of feel to it, and they kept the costume faithful to the costume concepts. The issue after Brubaker left, the guy they brought on was a Balent type of artist, and it went from being a jacket to a jacket. And I said, I came out of our bedroom and I said to my wife, I said, I don't want to read this book anymore. And she said, well, then don't. And I was like, you don't understand this. I was looking forward to this book every single month. This was so much fun. And now, it's a little bit the story, but it's mostly the art. And I'm going to say no, because I don't want this book. And it makes me sad. I'm sad.
Mm-hmm.
So
anyway. This ties into what I was going to talk about and why I brought up Captain America. Because Captain America, we just had that, and now we have the Snow White coming out in a week. And that's.
Can I just say, I still cannot believe that this movie is actually making it to theaters. After 3 years?
Why didn't they do a Batgirl? Cancel it and take the tax cut.
I cannot believe they didn't do that 3 months ago, and 6 months ago, and a year ago.
Yeah, it's just what a string of errors,
Yeah, it's crazy.
But
there's no way this movie's going to make money, right?
This is why
I wouldn't think with all the reshoots.
And yet Disney will still be out there advertising it as the #1 movie in America.
Yeah.
Sure.
It probably will be because there's nothing else coming out. But what is coming out is a Working Man, which is the adaptation of Chuck Dixon's books. The
Levon's
books.
Trade. I'm actually excited for that.
Yeah, and
the trailer looks really good.
For the few who don't know, I am Chuck Dixon's proofreader. When he does these Levon Cade books, he sends them off to me to read them first and go through.
Which I did not realize.
Yeah, well, right? It's not a secret. He thanks me in the front of the book. So
here's my big secret is.
Whoop!
Oh, not again! You did it again.
Wait, your big secret is what? You're silent. We can't hear you
again.
Can't hear you.
It's a new laptop and he keeps hitting a button.
My big secret is sound cuts out. It's like, that's perfect. What did he do?
We don't know.
There we go. Yeah, we hear you.
We know how to milk you for content.
What the heck?
You couldn't ask for a better cut.
I don't even understand what happened. I was just looking at a different thing on a different tab quick. Well, I've not read the Cade books.
Okay.
Right? So shame on me. Right. But it's just been one of those things where, they sound cool, but pennies gotta go where pennies gotta go.
Absolutely.
And that's something that I haven't taken the time to shell out for. But I've known he's been doing it for a while, and the story sounded really cool, and I'm keen to hear. Was keen when I heard the movie was getting made, and that sounds really cool. And then it was a couple weeks ago on the show he mentioned you by name.
Yeah,
and I'm on his show. He mentioned you by name, and mentioned that you do this proofreading and stuff, and because he was talking about a particular element in the stories, and I was just like, "Well, damn it! How has Mike never mentioned that to me? How has that never come up?"
Yeah. For those who don't know out there who are watching, Levon Cade is how Chuck Dixon scratches his Punisher itch, since he can't write Punisher anymore, and he kind of has that, he wants that Punisher sort of character. He came up with this character called Levon Cade. The first book is Levon's Trade. So if you're looking for what is the name of the first book, it's Levon's Trade. It's not called Levon Cade, although how they package this is going to be interesting because they changed the name for the movie. So I'm sure they're going to put out the book as A Working Man, and then Levon Cade in small print, kind of like they did with Blade Runner being Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? And how do you put out the book? You call it Blade Runner because you want people to buy the book, so the same with this. So anyway, Levon Cade is just this guy pushed into back into violence. He's got a huge military background, and the first book he starts out like his employer, who is also his friend, has a daughter who's kidnapped, and he asks him to go look for her, and it leads into a whole thing that spirals out of control that completely disrupts Levon's life. And then the series goes off from there because he's on the run. I don't have to tell you any more than that, but the And he just deals death right and left as he goes into the underworld. And in one of the recent books, there's a really cool character that he introduces who is he's one of the bad guys. He's working for one of the bad guys, and this is like the child abduction series that he was doing, where which is part of the arcs. It's one of the arcs that he goes into. The bad guys hire this guy to deal with Levon Cade, and the character, I swear it's like Michael Rooker was written to do this. He even describes it as the whitest guy you've ever seen, and like to the point that he might be an albino, or at least he's just pasty white, and he's got these guys that he sends out to work for him, and it turns out he's really smart. He is like a detective. He's like a bad guy detective. He actually is able to figure out what Levon Cade is up to. He really uses his brains, and it's like, I actually like this character. Now he's a bad guy, and he's a racist, and he's terrible, but he's interesting. He's one of those interesting bad guys that you don't want to see get killed off, and he didn't at the end of one of the books. And I was like so grateful because Levon Cade kills everybody who's bad, and then he had a reason to not take this guy out. And when I read the book, I got to that part at the end, and I wrote to him and said, "Oh my gosh, you didn't kill him off. Yay. I was hoping you'd leave him alive." And he was like, "Okay, I did the right thing," because my editor was happy about it. My spell checker is happy about that. So there you go. So yeah, that's what Chuck was talking about for my side of the thing. So yeah, when Chuck started doing novels, I at first sent him feedback. I said, "Okay, I found a typo on page 5, found a typo on page 14. Next time, since it's digital, you can at least fix the digital book. And if you go to a second printing, you could fix it." And the next book comes out, and I did the same thing. Next book comes out, I did the same thing. And he's like, "I should send these to you first before beforehand." That's how it happened. So that's what I got into checking the Levon Cade books. But yeah, the Chuck Dixon was asked by Sylvester Stallone to pitch things for Expendables 2, just kind of come in and pitch some ideas, like maybe some set pieces or some action ideas. And everything that Chuck pitched got rejected. And he's like, "Okay, so this isn't going anywhere." But out of that, he became friends with Sylvester Stallone. It just every now and then he just gets a call. "Oh, yo, it's Sly," and then they just talk for like an hour. He's like, "I never expected to have this friendship. It's really weird." And this is before Sylvester Stallone moved down to Florida, which is where Chuck lives. And so they were going to turn Levon Cade into a TV series, and he's been involved in some other things. He made a Expendables comic book that branched out of that. So he co-wrote that with Sylvester Stallone, and then Sly wrote the actual story for the A Working Man movie, and then it's got his buddy as the star, and it's got the guy who did Suicide Squad as the director, and so I'm excited about that. And it comes out the day before my birthday, so that's my birthday present, as I can afford to go to a movie for once.
No more Pokemon cards, or
Matt doesn't have any sound?
not again? We're just going to do a silent stream tonight, folks.
I guess. Oh, I heard that. I heard you breathing.
Oh, good.
Okay. I was like, he's not saying anything back, and then I realized, he can't say anything back.
I'm having just technical problems, man. I was trying to share the link over on Facebook, and it kept me in a loop of like, "You want to edit this post? No, I want to post it. You want to edit this post? No, I want to post it. You want to edit this post?" It's like, dude, I know the grammar is wrong. I did it on purpose.
That's funny. So
I got an email from San Diego Comic-Con last week to vote on the Hall of Fame because I'm a comic book editor. I know how to use grammar.
Cool. I mean, it's cool that you got invited to weigh in on that.
Yeah.
So
it's not that special. I volunteered. I put myself in last year to vote on the Eisners, and so
I remember you talking about the candidates. Yeah.
And now I'm on the mailing list, so that's kind of fun.
So Snow
A couple
White.
of the people I voted for got the award. So that's nice. Yeah.
So Snow White, the what was Metal joining? Metal's here.
He heard me give my take about something and is mad. I'm not sure what.
No, I literally only just got here. I didn't even have the show on before this. So
well, good. We're talking about Disney Snow White.
Yeah. I came up with a rule for
why,
Hollywood.
How did we start talking about that?
Because I wanted to tell my rule. This is
right.
I came up with a rule for Hollywood for anything that is adapting an existing property. And the whole point of having an existing property is that it has people already interested in it, right?
Right.
Otherwise, what's the point? But if it has fans, then it must have done something right. If it's a book,
actually, I will point out
what
if we go back, especially since we're talking about Disney, If we go back far enough, there are definitely times when Disney would make an adaptation out of something that nobody knew about until they made theirs. So there is another reason, that's simply because you like the story and want to do something cool with it.
Yeah,
that is also a possibility. If something has no fans, though, that doesn't really apply to what I'm talking about. But
right, I get it. In modern day, that's basically why people do this.
Right. It is entirely possible you might find a book that nobody else loves, and you're like, this is a good story, and you turn it into something. But for the most part, like The Iron Giant was a book that had very little to do with the movie, and that kind of thing. But okay, if you're adapting something, mostly it's because it has an existing fan base, whether it's Star Wars, comic books, you're doing a remake of an old movie,
fairy tales.
Right. The fairy tales that they're based on, they're popular. I mean,
all of them are popular.
Yeah. And so here's the rule: if the first priority that you have is not satisfying the fan base, your project is going to fail. If there is something higher than that is going to fail. And so that if you're doing an algorithm, that should be the first question: is will this make the fan base happy? And then you go down to the next thing, and is now you recast the main character to be a different gender or a different race. Go back to the loop. Does it make the existing fan base happy?
Well, and here's the thing is with that though.
What's that?
With that though, you gotta keep in mind there are times where that's done on purpose, right? With very intentional. Like for example, I mean, a lot of times it's done on purpose anyway. But I mean, like you look at the Jerry Lewis film Cinderfella, right? Where Jerry Lewis has nothing in common with the Cinderella character,
right?
It's the absolute
it's
almost
deliberately putting a spin on it.
Right. It's intentionally subversive because it's meant to be funny, right?
Right.
You're taking it out of funny, and that's the whole thing with Shrek. Why does Shrek work? Because it's an anti-fairy tale that subverts the expectation of the fairy tale genre, because it's actually telling us, well, and it's more wholesome than it seems too. I mean, it's subversion for the point of contrast, for the point of actually telling the same moral that any other sword and sorcery fairy tale does, right? It's still the man's side of the Rapunzel story, really.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, I get what you're saying. But
So,
but we get what Hutch is saying though, is that we all talk about the check boxes that Hollywood always has. It ends up destroying things. The problem though, Hutch, is that you are asking 90-year-old people in Hollywood, billionaires, to get in touch with other human beings.
Yes.
Yes,
I know why they fail this. I'm just pointing out that it's Kathleen Kennedy. Her entire Star Wars fails because the number one priority is not make the existing fan base happy.
Well, I mean,
because it has never occurred to her in all of the failure, it has never gone back to, should I make a story about manly men doing manly things and rescuing princesses, or do I want to have girl bosses that's something that was never in Star Wars, and take my chance that it totally ruins it? And that's all she does.
Well, what happens is they think that this is going to make people happy because they're looking at study after study after study that tells them what people care about politically, socially, yada, yada, yada. And that's the stuff. Again, to actually get past this, you have to be able to talk to another human being outside your 40-story high rise.
Right. Well, I'm actually going to push against you on that, because that's not actually what the studies show, right? The studies don't show that Kathleen Kennedy's Star Wars should work. The studies show that, because
there is a point where the ESG score takes over as well.
Right. It's not even that, but what I'm saying is that like statistically, if you look at the actual studies, the sociological study, the Judeo-Christian ethical system, and the classical Western heroic canon lead toward greater human flourishing and happiness. And that's why those stories that fall into that category are wildly successful. That's why Star Wars works, despite the fact that George Lucas wants them to be a commie wet dream. They're not. They are traditional Western hero fare, and that's why they work. He thinks they're about Vietnam because that guy's a friggin' moron. But he actually told a story that's about good versus evil, right? And it's a very Western,
Well, there are times where he lets that slip, though. Like,
well, yeah, I mean,
he's fully aware of what the stories actually are. It's just like reality and what
I don't think he's
do not agree.
I actually don't think
because he's said it a few times in different interviews, but it's something that almost has to like Freudian slip out.
Right, but that's the thing. Yeah. That's the thing is, I don't think he's even aware because that's why the prequel trilogy was such garbage, was because it really was his commie worldview, turned into a film.
That's how you see that, because
everything about the prequels are really awful.
Yeah, I agree, but there's something like this is really a weird take for me, because the one thing that I noted about those prequels, as well as the show, that I thought he did right was we've got a story about a slowly falling apart, corrupted republic, right? That is going down the tubes as its leaders are becoming more corrupt and selling out to the highest bidder. And meanwhile, you've got this guy behind the scenes who ends up taking over by pitting two sides against each other and sitting back and waiting to see who's going to win.
Yeah.
If that was not a perfectly purposeful metaphor as to exactly what is happening right now, I don't know what is.
Yeah, but the problem is that he doesn't do it well. I mean, your summation is better than his. I mean, I was actually thinking about this a lot just this last weekend about the what was the last one called? Something of the Sith, Revenge of the Sith.
That's
is that what
number
it's called?
3.
Yeah, the third one. Okay, third one is Revenge of the. See, I don't even remember the title anymore.
It's such a horrible movie.
One,
it's coming back to the theaters too.
Yeah, and I get that there was no subtle stuff like, Star Wars was subtle in the way that, it's about the Viet Cong defeating the big American menace, even though they're overpowered and all that.
And even though that isn't actually at all what happened, but okay.
Right, but that is his view of it. And I'm just saying, and
because he's part of the commie propaganda.
Right.
Again, I don't get that when he's said himself so many times that so much of the early series was based off World War II.
Yeah,
sure.
It was, but once again, he directly equated America to the Empire.
Right.
He explicitly said that it's based on World War II and America are the bad guys.
Right.
That's the thing is,
and then Revenge of the Sith
he's
is
literally designing them after Nazis. And
he thinks that America are Nazis.
And then Revenge of the Sith, it's obviously the Patriot Act. I'm just saying. The third one, it's so obviously about the Patriot Act, and it's so overwrought in that way. It's like, this little froggy monster comes out and says, I am still going to be here, and I'm going to be an emperor, and we're going to be an empire now. And everybody's like, yay! And it's like, in what way did he sell this? There's no way that a republic would do this, it's so silly in the way that it's done. There isn't even he doesn't do politics well enough to make it make sense,
Yeah, he doesn't he doesn't understand the things, and that's why like episode 4 was only any good because Lucas's wife, who he divorced later,
and ruined
the picture, and then he found more talented, better artists to bring forward his vision because he doesn't have the chops to make it happen.
I've always known he's not a director.
Yeah,
but I've always felt he had a much more
idea
man. Vision than he's capable.
Okay, so this goes back to the old Uncle Socrates, right? Right. And I cannot remember the name of the dialogue, right? But Socrates is talking to a poet, and Socrates says, "So tell me, who's responsible for the art of the poet?" And the poet says, "It's the muses." He said, "Oh, so you as a poet, you don't know anything then?" It's like, well, I wouldn't say that. He's like, "Well, do you create inspiration?" Well, no, it comes from from nature and from the muses. And so you speak from something you don't know, I guess, and you speak from with skill that you don't have because you're imbued with this by some force outside of yourself. It's like, I guess. So you are interchangeable, and I shouldn't listen to a word you have to say because you don't know anything. That's, yeah. And there is no better example of that of anyone I've ever met or read or been in any way exposed to than George Lucas, who doesn't understand the matter of the stories he told.
But see, I always wonder if that's the case, or if he actually has so much better a vision than he's ever going to be capable of actually making happen.
He doesn't have the vision at all. He just stumbles his way through it. He cribbed some notes from he took one Joseph Campbell class and said, "Oh, that'll make it fun." And then he follows the formula rote by rote. Doesn't understand what he's doing at all. He thinks he has all these great understandings about Eastern mysticism, and he's just bumming his way around. He has no clue what's going on. He almost fails miserably. Would be an utter poppery if it wasn't the fact that his wife came in and pushed him out of the edit room and says, "George, I got this." Takes care of it, and he's so utterly ungrateful to it.
You have to see how Star Wars was saved in the edit. Yeah,
not necessarily a vision issue, right? I always feel like I can see that there's something much more there behind it than what he's capable of putting out on film.
It's not. There is. There's the fabric of the universe behind it, but it's not from Lucas. He doesn't understand. He absolutely doesn't understand the world around him for the first pitch. That's why he sold it. That's why he got to do exactly what he wanted with the prequel trilogy, and it was terrible. And he caught so much flack from it and got so butthurt that he was like, "Well, I guess nobody wants me to make my movies. I'll just sell them for $1 trillion to Disney." And then he does. It's like, "I feel like I sold my children into slavery." There's no better example of the death of the artist than that dude.
All right. Well, you have made me defend Lucas for far too long. So
yeah, we can change
thanks a lot for that.
Well, I really have to say, only in the last year did I learn about the truth about Return of the Jedi, that he had been setting up a whole nother series of 3 films. I know, but just let me finish. That the whole, there is another thing was about how it's going to end with Luke saying, "Okay, now I have to go find my sister." And then Lucas is just like, I don't really want to do that. She's his sister. And it's like, no, Leia doesn't work. It does not work. Then you've made a movie, the first movie, where he's like, "Oh, this lady's so beautiful. I'm going to go rescue her." And she kisses him and he swings across the thing and they've got a rivalry. And it's like, you can't turn her into his sister. Then he went across space to save his sister, which is also incredible odds. In addition to the fact that Darth Vader, chases the plans down to the planet where his son is, that's already unlikely enough. But then you have this plans sent by his sister get to him and get him to go on an adventure that ends up with him rescuing his sister, being menaced by their dad. It just doesn't work, If he had just not whisked out at the end, if he just kept to the original premise, it would have been such a better movie,
There are several things like that in that movie because he was having to cram everything.
See, and here's the thing: is in retrospect, I think there are real ways of overcoming the unbelievable odds, and they're actually seated in the first movie. But once again, I don't believe Lucas understood this at all. Yeah. So he went on a big deal about how they make a huge plot point in the dialogue about, these blaster bolts are too accurate for anyone but Imperial stormtroopers.
Yeah,
right.
They make a big deal about how accurate stormtroopers are, and yet stormtroopers never come close to hitting anyone.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. That are important to the story. Right? Well, the obvious solution is that the Force, unlike what Lucas believes, where the Force is some sort of passive energy of life in the universe. No, the Force makes decisions. It has a will. It interacts with people. It's it's may not be personal like we understand personality, but it definitely is active and involved in the creation, right?
Mhm.
The Force is far more like a deity and less like an energy field, even if it manifests itself as an energy field. And the Force is interrupting the action of the stormtroopers to preserve those chosen ones as they go on about manifesting the Force's will, right? And that's why every time you see a stormtrooper, you see you're following the main characters. So every time you see a stormtrooper, they suck. But outside of the camera, they killing everybody. And that's how Vader's children happen to be in the right place. That's how they happen to develop these bonds of affection. Even if they seem weird, they can readjust those things because Han Solo is in there to be the proper focal of masculine energy toward Leia, right? And to be the properly focal of brotherly love toward Luke, right? And so Luke learns through loving Han like a brother how to love Leia like a sister, even though he carries a torch for her. It's unrequited because the Force has directed Han to be there, to be that focal of masculine energy. And so you have that all builds together. Now, Lucas didn't understand any of this. He was just he's like, Jabba, yeah, that's the ticket, big slug monster, yeah, right. He's just making stuff up, but these things are in there because they are in the soup of reality, and they speak to the truths of our experience.
This
but
is so typical too of Star Wars that somehow the fans end up creating lore that wasn't in the movie to actually explain what happened in the movie.
Yeah,
it happens all the time. One thing interesting is that what you just described, of course, I'm glad that you too appreciate the what's it called, the catastrophic ending, right? The idea that someone is in charge and always has been, and is determining that there will be a happy ending. One thing that is interesting about that is that the very first movie, and literally nothing ever since, had tendencies toward that, where at the end, Lucas, and he's done this twice now, he seems to like this idea of telling a story of the character, in this case Luke, having to give up what, his normal tendencies to rely on himself, or in this case his technology, and trust in something bigger than him, right? Now, he did that infinitely better, in my opinion, later on in Raiders of the Lost Ark than he did in Star Wars. But it is interesting that you can sort of see what might have been an early idea that ended up getting scrapped later, because certainly after that, suddenly the Force just becomes this like magical field that you use to get whatever you want, and Jedi or wizards. And it's like, man, there was like potential there. Don't know what happened. But I was glad to see that he ended up bringing it back in Indiana Jones, because honestly, I binge watched them a few years ago, and I realized I really like Indiana Jones, actually.
Yeah. Oh,
this
Indiana
is a good
Jones is great.
series.
Honestly, if we're only even comparing the first, like the trilogies of the originals, Indiana Jones is a much better trilogy than Star Wars.
Much better.
That's coming from somebody like really likes Star Wars.
Even given the 3/4 garbage fire, maybe 2/3 is more accurate, of Temple of Doom.
Oh, I love Temple of Doom.
Yeah,
you know what? I went in thinking
Temple
I remembered
Doom.
it being garbage, and even that I was like, actually, I don't know what I was thinking.
Yeah,
and then
I like Temple of Doom. I do not love Temple of Doom. There are things about Temple of Doom that I really enjoy.
I am not
mostly it's short round.
I'm not saying that I'm like
great.
in any way just like, oh man, I just love Indiana Jones, super fan about any of it. It's just I discovered they're all good movies, and I really appreciate what they bring to the table. And so then I got to watch the fourth one for the first time, right?
Why?
I know people are about to come at me with pitchforks, but I didn't get it. I was like, what was wrong with this movie?
Oh, okay.
I don't know what you are all yelling and screaming about.
I don't think it's the worst thing ever. It definitely pales in comparison to the stuff that came before it.
I don't think it pales. I agree that it's the weakest version, or the weakest of the four, but I really did not have a problem aside from a couple bad CGI moments. Like, it felt just as much like an Indiana Jones movie to me as the others. And that was the interesting thing. It's like, wow, Lucas still seems to understand this franchise.
Well, see, then I would question whether or not you understand Indiana Jones.
I understand the feeling that I got from all of these.
See, that's it's not about your feelings.
No. The feeling is,
No,
I mean, there's a style.
So here is why Indiana Jones 4 is a terrible picture, right? The fundamental premise of the Indiana Jones pictures, right, is especially of the original 3, the fundamental premise that everything depends upon this. If you don't have this depends upon this, then they don't work at all. The premise is that all of the old stories are true. All of the old stories are true. Now, in Indiana Jones 4, none of the old stories are true.
That's not true. That's
because
true.
Instead of dealing with gods, instead of dealing with spirit beings, they're like, oh no, they're not spirit beings. They're aliens. Well, they're not aliens. They're pan-dimensional beings from the other. They're freaking aliens. And he did aliens because he likes aliens, because it's in the 50s and everything's aliens and sci-fi, and we're getting rid of this old black and white Marvel, a Universal Pictures movie nonsense. No more money for me, guys. We're going sci-fi. And he betrayed the fundamental premise of the other pictures, and in doing so, undoes all of the mythology that it's based on.
I disagree, because I just see the aliens in the 50s become the new old story.
Yeah, but they're not.
Their mythology.
They're the now story. They're still the now story. That's been the story since the 50s. And so you can't have the cup of Christ and aliens, especially when you're dealing with the fact that the whole premise they built up there is the archaeology, and they're discovering the old artifacts, and the show. Okay, so whatever crystal skulls are, there's still a big mystery about what the heck that is, right? So we don't even really know. In the real world, we don't know, but we do know it connects to the cult beliefs of the Mesoamericans, from the pre-Columbian times. Does he address that at all? No. He says whatever they happen to believe, it doesn't matter because the aliens.
And see, I'd never even heard about the crystal skull things before that movie came out.
They're very niche, and they don't get a lot of airplay because nobody knows what the hell they are.
Anyway, then
I only heard about them from Dan Aykroyd.
Yeah,
Disney got a hold of it. Back to you. Yeah, Disney got a hold of it, and then what?
In modern day, where they're messing everything up, and so okay, we know this is absolutely going to be a disaster, right? Right?
I don't know. I haven't seen it.
Right?
I
haven't watched it.
I'm sorry. Whatever anybody else thinks, I have never seen an Indiana Jones movie that I didn't like.
I mean, this actually just
an idea.
This kind of just tracks with the typical Cartoonicus opinion, though, so I'm not surprised.
Yeah, this is in fact the American cheese on pizza level of movie.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I guess maybe I should be more understanding and less cruel.
But I will give a counterpoint. The fact is, it doesn't actually matter what the facts are. When it comes to media and enjoyment, feelings are literally the only thing that matters.
No, true. But when I say feeling, what I'm referring to is that Indiana Jones has this very unusual and distinct style. And, just feeling of the whole universe that they present, the way they do things in the movies, the way they do stunts, the kinds of visuals there are. And I felt that was carried through entirely, even 30 years later. He had not forgotten that.
Yeah, it is in fact a movie that is made on sound stages and with special effects. So in that case, yes, you're right.
Mm-hmm. I do have to say that, a lot of people get, upset about the whole nuking the fridge thing. But here's the thing.
Perfect example, I think.
The third movie, he suddenly has his binoculars strung around a cannon in a way that it couldn't possibly have done in order for him to be hanging from it on the tank. The first movie, they're having a big truck chase through the desert, and all of a sudden one Nazi car, goes off to the side, and suddenly there's a huge canyon only there for a moment. and then they're back on the desert, And
For me, it was the moment in Temple of Doom when I
Yeah.
had totally forgotten that they take this
are you going to say
mine
water
car.
power?
No,
Oh.
it's the mine car. And not only do they turn it into a ride at Disney World,
Mm-hmm.
but they then go as far as to jump a gap in the tracks.
Right.
And
Yeah, it's
that
like the
was
inspiration for Donkey
See,
Kong Country's
that
minecart
was
You
level.
interrupted me before I got to the second movie, which was that my big problem is that they have this big chase through all these lava pits and everything, and then they get to the end, and the guys knock over a water tower, and it's like, well, how does that not fall into the lava? And how does it possibly catch up to it? That would work if it was a little tunnel, but we just saw it's not a big little tunnel. It's a whole amusement park ride with vast open spaces. That water would not get to the other end.
And yet
We
I'm
just saw
watching
that.
all this and thinking all of that, and somehow, instead of being like in any other movie, I swear this would be the kind of thing I'd rant about. Somehow, it's part of the charm.
Right.
It's like there's just this air about Indiana Jones that begs you to be just a little bit cheesy and
So
fantastic and
also
fun.
you shouldn't give that
the
to
cheese
Lucas.
isn't the problem. It's the inconsistency.
No, you shouldn't give that to Lucas though. A lot of the stylistic consistency came from Spielberg.
Oh, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean it's the only explanation for why I do not give a darn about Star Wars. Yet I've really come to like these movies, right?
So here's a side note. Okay, now we're talking about Spielberg. We're talking about Indiana Jones. Have I ever laid out to you my crazy Indiana Jones theory?
Probably
I don't
not.
think so.
Okay. I believe
in universe theory or
in universe theory, sort of in, sort of out. I believe that Goonies is a sequel to Indiana Jones.
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
And I think the Data, played of course by Ken Jeong, right? His name is right. Can't say it because
Ki Hai Kwan
is in fact the grandson of Short Round.
Since I never actually got around to seeing the Goonies, is this?
Well, watch it. It's Richard Donner directed it, but
is this because of an actor that was in both movies?
Well, yeah. The guy, the cat that played Short Round is the guy that played Data, same actor. The character Data in thing. But it also has some of the same thematic elements where all the old stories are true. That is consistent within Goonies. It's a kid's adventure. It's like E.T. is connected to Star Wars, whether we want it to be or not. It's in the same way that E.T. is in the Star Wars universe, the same way that I believe that the Goonies is in fact a sequel to Indiana Jones.
I like theories like that.
Yep.
They also all exist in the
Goonies
same world that Jaws does.
What now?
They also all exist in the same world that Jaws does.
I don't see why not. It certainly can. Now I wouldn't put like the Indiana Jones, Goonies, and Jaws in with Star Wars, right? So like E.T. is not part of the Indiana Jones.
No, that's separate.
That's definitely different.
There's not even any connection points. In like the sequels to Jaws, there's some connection points that you could put that it's in the same world as like Goonies and well, specifically Goonies. But if you can connect Goonies to Indiana Jones, then you could say they're in the same world too. Yep.
Now I would also say though that Close Encounters of the Third Kind and E.T. have to coexist.
Yeah,
and therefore, Close Encounters and Star Wars, it's a long time ago in a galaxy far away from Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Creating a Spielberg theory, like the Pixar theory, could be a very interesting thing to do.
I hate the Pixar theory.
I do too.
The Pixar theory is stupid.
Yeah.
So, like I said, pitchforks.
Well, yeah, and this is true. There are Indiana Jones Easter eggs in Star Wars too. That's true.
I don't think Easter eggs though inherently connect universes.
Well,
it has to be a little bit stronger.
Well, because some Easter eggs are there accidentally because they use the same props, right? Like the whole setting from the Journey to the Center of the Earth, that film, and the costumes reused in the Wild Wild World of the Batwoman, and those aren't connected stories at all.
Well, and I mean, think about it. Star Wars created the most used, or or reused item ever, and that's the Wilhelm scream.
Well,
Well,
Star
I mean,
Wars
well-
didn't create it.
They popularized it amongst.
No, I'm not saying they
yeah,
recorded it, but yeah, they made it the Wilhelm scream, right?
It had been used before that.
It was from the movie where they said, "Hey, Wilhelm," and he says, "Yes," and then an arrow hits him, and you go, "Ah!"
But I'm saying it became the Wilhelm scream as we know it, starting with Star Wars.
I guess, yeah.
I mean, it got used in other stuff, but I don't
And
think
then it was Ben Burt that really ran with it and used it in a whole bunch of stuff beginning around the time of Star Wars. It was, yeah. It was actually not even from that Western. It was originally "Man Gets Eaten by Alligator" was the name of the sound effect, because it was from some jungle movie before that one where a man got eaten by an alligator. And so, and then they reused it in the Western, and that's where Ben Burt saw it, and he called it the Wilhelm scream.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So Star Storyteller says, actually, do you guys know what magical realism is? I'm not familiar with that genre of book. Yes, I believe that's an alternate term for urban fantasy.
Is it an alternate term for urban fantasy?
I believe it is.
I think it's more just basically it's when you focus more on the normal stuff in life than the little bit of magic that you throw in the story. Right? It's like magic.
Yeah.
Here,
so what I'm getting a definition in front of me, and it says it's a style of writing that blends realistic elements with the magical or supernatural ones, and kind of blends the line between reality and fantasy.
Like the Deckard Files.
Yeah, I would probably put the Deckard Files in there. Yeah.
Yeah. And that would be or Constantine. A lot of Constantine, and those are urban fantasies where they're
a type of urban fantasy. I think as a genre, urban fantasy is too big to just say that it's another.
No, you're probably right. Because because you look at Brett McGowan's Changeling is technically urban fantasy.
Yeah,
but it's not nearly as.
Ex Dynamis Chaos is technically urban fantasy.
What?
Ex Dynamis Chaos is technically urban fantasy.
Well, yeah.
It's a pretty wide genre.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, that's
yeah.
It is urban. I mean, Ex Dynamis Chaos is urban fantasy, but it's urban fantasy in the same way that like superhero universes are urban fantasy, where they're it's not. Yeah, I don't. I mean, I'm not trying to be dismissive of what UK is either, but it's just that it's. I mean, I wouldn't have thought of it as urban fantasy, even though
Harry Potter is also urban fantasy.
What?
Harry Potter is also urban fantasy.
Well, yes.
Half the time.
Yeah.
My introduction to the term
depends whether at school or not, but
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
My introduction to the term magical realism actually came from my sister-in-law, who was explaining to me, the various books she likes and has read and stuff. And almost everyone, as she was explaining it, sounded far more slice of life than adventure or action or anything. Right?
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing.
Would you say
Bringing
Buffy
magic
the
to the
Vampire
mundane.
Slayer is urban fantasy? Is that what we're talking about?
Buffy the Vampire Slayer? Yeah.
Yeah.
I would think so.
So really, urban fantasy, when it first started being used as a genre name, was just a way of saying contemporary fantasy.
Yes,
it's
modern,
fantasy that takes place in the modern day, in our time, that has to deal with the modern things that you don't put in like historical or high fantasy or the classical genres.
And they're not low fantasies like He-Man or Thundar the Barbarian, which Thundar the Barbarian is like fantasy, but it's in the future, so it's kind of like a Ross's thing. But it's still a low fantasy setting because it's not this world, even though it is kind of this world, but it's also not. It's in the future. So like Beauty and the Beast, the Ron Perlman series from the 80s, would be an urban fantasy.
Okay.
Without question.
Or John Carpenter's Vampires, which is where they have like I forget what they have. They have like a they go in with wires and they hook them up to the vampires, and then they use a motor to drag them out into the sunlight to kill them. Yeah.
I guess the thing is, it's like
I think most modern vampire stuff is urban fantasy, just in general.
Well, yeah, and that's like when you look at like Anne Rice, right? So like Interview with the Vampire would not be urban fantasy because it was like, mostly in the past.
Yeah.
But the Queen of the what's that the sequel? Queen of the Damned?
Yeah.
would be, because it's all present day or like
Yeah.
70s kind of thing.
I think the problem we're running into is that, because magic is nearly indefinable, right? You just know it when you see it. It's like, at what point do you get to, there are movies that do all kinds, and stories really, that do all kinds of various things. What do you call Groundhog Day, right? Or like bedtime. There are stories where just weird things had happened.
Yeah.
And you don't necessarily know what to call it, right? You're not
It's a
going
Twilight
off
Zone
into
story.
a genre like we think of fantasy, right? It's just like, oh, look, this guy's having weird nightmares, and then the nightmares are coming true the next day, right?
Well, I mean, Groundhog Day doesn't. I mean, like any magic that's happening in it is like implicit within it. So I wouldn't think that that's necessarily would even fall even into the realm of a fantasy per se. It's more of a mythic story about what meaning is. It's like a Twilight Zone. I mean, you wouldn't
like Mike.
What?
Like Mike. Kid gets struck by electricity or by lightning while holding Michael Jordan's shoes and inherits.
And then
Michael
he can
Jordan's
play
power.
like Michael Jordan.
Right. Like, there's a lot of movies like this. They just come up with the simplest little explanation for something, and that's it. The rest of the movie is just about making the stuff happen. They do not care about the reason it's happening. And then you're left with, what is this? Sci-fi, fantasy,
Well, technically, if we're broad with the term, if you're using fantasy in its original definition, sure. But we have a stricter definition when you use for genres now. Because technically everything that happens outside of the realms of the everyday is fantasy.
Right.
That's just how it is.
Right. But once you look into science fiction, then you're looking at ideas of things like the projected idea science could work. Right.
Yeah.
And
there is a blurred line between sci-fi and fantasy half the time.
Oh, yes, definitely. But I would say like Mike seems to speak more from an old Frankensteinian science, like 19th century science fiction kind of place, where the essences of Michael Jordan, be they spirit or not, be they spirit or in his in his sweat, whatever the essences are then imbued on this through the power of lightning.
But
likewise, I would throw Groundhog Day in the sci-fi category as well, because we don't know what is causing the loop. He's just in it, and it fits like a classical Twilight Zone style story that you could easily just say it's science fiction, especially because everything else is normal outside of what's causing the loop.
Yeah. Well, see, that's the thing. There are these types of movies like that. They're usually comedies, not always, where it's like, it's not fantasy over, where it's like, hey, we're going to go to another universe. It's not sci-fi. We're going to deal with all this cool scientific or futuristic stuff. It's like for a day or for a week, somebody is going to have something weird happen to them, right? And there are basically three ways that we see it done. There are ways where someone goes out of their way to really go ham on the world building and create this really complex explanation for why this is happening, right? Then there's this version, like Mike's, what is it? That movie where Steve Martin, the lady's urn falls out of the window and conks Steve Martin on the head, and her soul goes into him and takes over half
all
of his
of
body.
Me.
Right? Yeah, it's
I don't think I've even seen that.
All of Me. Yeah, it's All of Me with yes. What is her name?
So is it like,
I can't remember.
So is it in the same kind of like because Steve Martin has like a series of pastiche movies, The Man with Two Brains and Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid.
Love that one.
Yeah, I love Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid. It's a classic. It is and I don't think even though it's a comedy, I don't think I'm out of line in saying this. I think it might be the best noir picture made after the noir era.
Could be.
Right? Like
it would have some rivals, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what was that one? Billy Bob Thornton, The Man Who Died.
The Man Who Wasn't There.
Yeah, I think that was the one.
Okay.
That like film, like the visuals looked great, but the story was so lacking. But
that would be I think the black and white one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's The Man Who Wasn't There.
Yeah.
It's not great, but have you ever heard of a movie called Timer? I would be very surprised if you've even heard of it.
I think
it's a 2009 movie.
Okay, so it's not what I was thinking of. I was
I
thinking that I was remembering it on the shelf of a Blockbusters from back in the day, but that wouldn't have been it in 2009.
No, but 2009 movie. It's really amazing. I've watched the movie several times. I don't know if it's sci-fi or fantasy because it hinges on the idea that there's only one person for you to meet. You'll meet your true love at some point. Yeah, soulmate. You will meet your soulmate at some point, and this company comes up with a counter that you get embedded in your arm that counts down the time to when the exact moment when you will meet your soulmate. And once it's embedded, it only works if the other person has also gotten the surgery with the other counters that they match. And it's like, so if yours is just on zeros, it means that the other person hasn't gotten a timer. And so
that's
the
a
main
classic
character is
sci-fi.
Okay, but it's all hinged on the idea that first of all, this company can read the future and knows when that's going to happen, and that it knows when you will meet the person. That's a weird premise. But if it's possible, this company has found a way to do it. So
the reason it counts as sci-fi is it kind of goes with the Verne definition of that any substantial advancement in science is indistinguishable from magic.
Right.
So even though if it has like this magic air to it, the fact that a company can make a technology that does it puts it into the realm of sci-fi.
Well, and it's the idea that like, of the infinite number of possibilities that exist, only a few of them can happen. So a sufficiently complex computer can calculate the future of inevitabilities based upon all the variables.
Right.
So like the idea that if everything is truly reducible to math, then eventually somebody would be able to tell the future just by calculating all the options. And so that's
What's
the idea.
Even more important, though, is that by putting this in the future and doing your world building here, you have asked us to believe in a world where they have sufficient technology and science to make this happen, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And that is different from when, again, you get struck by lightning while holding Michael Jordan's shoes.
Right.
There's technically no actual reason why that one should equate to the other, but they're just enough. Lightning is weird, right? Electricity. And so we can take just enough information and just suspend disbelief and go with it.
It's not even that much disbelief suspended here. Let me explain it, right? So like it's an observable phenomena, right? It's an observable, provable, repeatable phenomena that people's personality changes when they're struck by lightning.
Yes.
Right? That's an absolute fact. It happens. That's point
so
one.
The only jump in the suspension of disbelief here is that there's some essence of Jordan left in the shoes. That's the only jump.
Right. But even then, we don't know. We also know that there are things that are different about us, and we don't know what they are. Right? We don't know if it's in our DNA. We don't know if it's in our diet. We don't know what it is. But there is something that makes you, and me, and those aren't the same. And even though we are 99% identical genetically, there's some gap between us, and it's more than nurture. It's more than nature. Nobody knows what it is, but there is an essence. Mm-hmm. So if we believe, and we also can observe that, like when you're around places, you get the smell of things, and memories are attached to smells. And we also and I don't know if you've ever, and it's also observable. They've been talking about this for centuries, that you'll have a child that'll know the smell of their dad's coat, and then when they're 40, they'll smell their own coat, and it smells the same, and they've taken their dad's position, and they don't understand why that is. But we attach our memories and our things to all of these senses. So the idea that our essence is connected to us in a tangible way, it's totally believable. Now, do we know it? No. But is it possible? Yes.
But that's what I
mean. Well, I could
though,
even give
right?
the logic line of why his shoes are it, right? Because it's not just, basketball player shoe or whatever, but also where your effort, the thing that makes you successful, is also your sweat. So those shoes would be filled with his sweat, which is also his talent.
But still, the point is, the movie doesn't go into any of this, right? It just shows the lightning strike, and then it shows that he has the talent.
It's intuitive. You don't have to go into it.
Because
that's
all of
my
this
point.
stuff, all of these things you've described, they're part of our experiences, they're part of our collective knowledge, they're part of the ether of existence.
And what the movie is doing is asking us if we wish to put that together on our own, right? But it's basically saying, okay, 1 is close to 2, and 2 is close to 3, and 3 is close to 4, and 4 is close to 5. So 1 is basically close to 5, right?
Yes.
All right. And so the third type of movie is Groundhog Day, where they say, forget it. I am not going to write some stupid gypsy curse for this. We're just going to let strange things happen, because sometimes it's fun to just watch strange things happen, right?
So that's partially not true. The thing is, if you look at the earlier scripts for Groundhog Day, he actually juggled several different ideas of what should be the reason behind it, and they came to the conclusion that the movie is better if you just don't know.
Yeah, and that's what I mean.
Right. Which is what he said. Yeah, there
are many movies like that as well.
Yeah.
If you've ever
but it's not
seen
that they
one of my
didn't
favorite
write it.
movies. Oh no! But I mean, there was literally an argument though where that happened at the table, where the company was pushing them to give him a reason. He literally said those lines. What do you want me to do? Write some stupid gypsy curse, right? Because we've seen that a million times in movies, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, other movies. One of my favorite movies is called Bedtime Stories. If you've seen that.
Oh yeah, that's great.
I hate bedtime stories.
Really?
Why am I not surprised?
Yeah.
That's so surprising, because it's like Adam Sandler's one genuinely good picture. I mean,
yeah, I thought that was his worst picture that I've ever seen. I had to go and watch it in theaters with my cousin when it was new. I hate it.
Oh, this is crazy. Before we got on another tangent. So here's the deal. When you are doing the middle movies, the I got conked on the head, spirits exist, death, we can decide, okay, then something, there's a little bit of a connection, so that's what we'll go with. More often than not, what I've always noticed is these movies tend to be what I call Dumbo movies, which is your life gets crazy, usually better, but crazy for a while, and then one day your arm gets fixed, the shoelaces break, right? Right when you need it, the magic feather gets taken away, and the character is forced to win this basketball game on their own without the help of the thing that's been changing their life the whole time, right?
The rookie of the year.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
As opposed to when you have the no explanation at all. It seems there's only one way to actually describe. If we cannot have an explanation of our own, then all we're left with is each one of us trying to decide that for yourselves. And what happens in these movies is the thing only goes away once the character has learned the most valuable lesson that they need to learn. In which case, it kind of seems as whether, and you can name it yourself, whatever your religion is, or whether you just want to call it the universe or whatever, that you catastrophic ending comes into play. And it's as if somebody or something bigger than everything has decided this person needed to learn that lesson. So I'm going to send this affliction on them.
Yes, the
in order to teach them that. And then once the lesson is learned, boom, now we can go on with our normal lives.
Yeah, that's the book of Job, right?
Yeah. So it's just interesting how the various the ways you build your explanation or other lack thereof tends to actually change how your storytelling goes.
Oh, I want to take a minute to talk about Job and Jonah, because they're kind of in that boat where calamity befalls them until they learn something. But in both cases, this is so much fun. I had not stopped to think about this. In both cases, Jonah and Job are not learning their lesson, right?
Yeah.
So God himself shows up and says, "What the heck is your problem, man?" And Job's like, "You're right. I was out of line." And Jonah's like, "I knew you were too good."
Right. Job is like, "You're right. I was out of line." Jonah's like, "You were out of line."
Yeah. Job's like, "I could win a game of hide and seek with you. Trust me."
Because God comes up and demonstrates that he is in fact the divine sovereign of the universe, and Job's like, "I get it. You're right. You're the divine sovereign of the universe. I missed it for a second.
Didn't he know Job? In what way was Job wrong? It was
Job
just
was-
a test. It was just
Well,
a test in a
right.
battle.
Job. Okay, so here's the situation, right?
Okay.
Job wasn't wrong the way his friends thought he was wrong.
Right.
Okay.
Job's friends all thought that he had done something wrong. And Job is like, I have not done anything wrong. You think I'm wrong, but I haven't done anything wrong. But I will demand that God give me an answer for what the heck's going on here. I'm going to stand before God. I'm going to demand an answer. And if I die first, I'm going to show up at the throne. I'm going to be like, God, what the heck? You know I didn't have this coming. Just explain yourself. Right? So God shows up and says, hey, we got something to say. And Job's like, I don't. I thought I had something to say, and I was mistaken. So he misunderstood part of God's character because of his own struggles. He started to apply his friends' opinions of toward God, right? And so that was the situation we see in Job. And it doesn't start out that way. It ends up that way by like chapter 40, if I remember right, maybe 38. And so, but with Jonah never questions that God's merciful and that God's just. He wants God to be vengeful. And he's like, if I show up and tell people that God's going to judge them, they're going to figure it out. They're going to see what's going on. God's going to be merciful to these guys. And I don't want that. I don't want them dead.
They don't deserve it.
Because they deserve it. And so, so he finally relents. And he doesn't just say any of this stuff out loud. He relents. He goes and tells them. He sits down on the stuff, and it's so great. The way the phrasing, it doesn't explicitly say this, but the way the phrasing in the book reads when he goes to Nineveh, tells them about coming judgment. God is going to judge you. He's going to destroy you all.
Mm-hmm.
And then he goes up on a hill to just watch the destruction. Like it's as though he was told them in such a way that, nobody's going to want to repent because I was just a jerk. I did what God said. That's the story. It'll be fine. And then, he leaves. And everyone's like, oh my gosh, do you think that guy's serious? Maybe if we really repent, they won't. And they repent, and God doesn't judge them. And he just sits there, Jonah, on the outside of town, just sits there watching, seeing if his scheme worked. Once again, I might be stepping on this a little bit, but it really feels that way. Because in chapter 4, when he's waiting for all of this, it's the text says that God caused a great a plant to come up and shield Jonah from the sun, and Jonah is sitting there watching the show go down, but that doesn't wait for the show to go down. It doesn't go down, and he sees that he's not there, and he's just mad. So then a worm comes up at night and kills the root of the tree, and it all falls down. And then Jonah says, "How could you do this to me?" Here I was sitting on this berm, minding my own business, chilling in the shade, and you let this tree die. And God says, "Why?" Of course, you all know the story, but I'm going to go on anyway.
Yeah.
Why are you so mad about a plant when you're going to let thousands of people die?
Yeah.
What is wrong with you? Jonah says, see,
Everything.
that's it. I knew that you like those people more than that I like this plant. And here you go, being merciful, just like I knew you were gonna. Why do you think I ran away? And then the book ends.
I've always thought that the book of Jonah is the perfect Adam Sandler movie if you ever wanted to make a biblical story. They throw him in the water, the storm goes away, he's like, okay, bring me back on, come on, and they reach for him and the storm starts up and he's like, oh, come on. And they're like, okay, we're gonna have to leave you, bye. And well, this can't get any worse, and then gulp.
I could actually see that being pretty good. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, that would be great.
Well, what's interesting about Jonah, of course, is that, what do we call the point in any given story between the second and third act when the hero is at their lowest point? The belly of the whale.
Mm.
Where do you think that came from?
Yeah. Yeah.
As long as we're talking about all these
Pinocchio,
different Hollywood
yeah.
tropes.
Yeah, it came from
Right.
Here's the-
Pinocchio.
Hello, Tim.
Ah.
And here's the craziest thing about this. I grew up in a very fundamentalist religious community. Very fun. We're not Baptist because but Baptist, right? And so I never really questioned the idea that Jonah stayed alive in the whale. Right? I mean, if God can make the world by talking, then what's it to keep a dude alive in a fish's belly? But somebody pointed out to me about 10 years ago that the Bible never says he survived in the fish's belly. In fact, it says he went to hell in the fish's belly, into Sheol, specifically not hell like eternal punishment, but the grave, right? Into Sheol, the pit. And I'm like, wait.
That's interesting.
So once again, I believe that God made the universe by talking. It's really not hard for me to imagine he brought a prophet back to life after a couple.
Well, he's also described as like being completely scarred by it too, and everything. Because it's like, okay, well, yeah, there'd be like stomach enzymes all around him. Of course, he'd be like completely torn apart, and
yeah. And so
that is disappointing to me though, because I've put a lot of work into looking at this and seeing how scientifically it totally would be very possible if you have the right whale.
Well, and there are cases.
It probably wasn't even a whale.
Yeah.
Well, that's my point. Is I see it as probably it was, but that's based on this like whole possibility of what could be the case if you wanted to keep someone alive.
Right. Well, even then, you're looking at there were cases of whalers that got swallowed by whales back in the golden age of whaling 200 years ago, and there are people that lived for a day or more. There was a guy. I found one instance of a guy who was rescued after 3 days. His whaling crew, he'd gone overboard. The whale got away. It came back around, and they were gutting this dude, and there was a dude that was in the thing, and the whale had been swallowing air and everything, and he had been alive, but he died just like immediately after. And this was the third day after he was eaten. So they got him out, and he was able to like gasp and die. So,
actually, that does remind me. Sorry.
Go ahead. I was waiting for a moment, but go ahead.
Well, it's just that if Jonah did die and come back to life, that's actually very interesting because, and I think it is 3 days he was in there. That has always been a mirror to the fact that Jesus would be in the grave for 3 days and then come back. So actually, that's quite appropriate. Oh, okay, that's what you were going to say.
No, Tankatron just said that in the
Oh, did he? I wasn't paying attention.
It just came across, but
so actually, that's quite appropriate. To be fair, that's interesting.
Yeah. So I've been wanting to point out something since we started talking about Groundhog Day. Have you ever noticed that the one thing he doesn't do is wake up at 6 o'clock, run downstairs, steal a car, and race out of town? But because the storm doesn't really come until later in the day after he does his appearance.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that there was a man swallowed by. Yeah, I've seen the video of that. Got swallowed and spit back out. Yeah. Is that what you were pointing at, or?
No, I was pointing at the comment that he doesn't leave town first thing in the morning.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah.
I had never thought about that. That's
I was watching a video about it recently. People have asked the question, just how long did he actually spend in that town?
Yeah.
Because in between
it varies.
Scenes, you could actually have been staying there for years or centuries, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's no saying that he didn't at one point, just that we don't see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you think if he ever escaped the town, that would be the end of the curse.
Yeah.
So.
I would suspect
because it's not necessarily a curse.
Right. Whatever you want to call the
purgatory
thing. Yeah.
But it basically implying
the groundhog itself as being that source of the higher being. But I never thought about it that way. Again, I would just see it's like
the
somebody
fact that he even kills himself.
He could be anywhere in the universe, right? He could be anywhere
back.
in the
It
world.
doesn't matter. He get everything except for that one last time where he got it right. any other result is implied that it wouldn't change. If he raced out of town, if he were to drive as far as their car could take him, when he next goes to sleep or whatever, he'll still wake back up in that bed at 6 o'clock the next day.
There must have been one day where he goes on TV and says, "I'm trapped in time," and just goes crazy on screen.
I wouldn't be surprised if there was some scene in the original script where they might have had exactly that happen, and they just had to cut it for time.
Well, he's gone through every permutation of what you can do. Like you said, I've seen theories of how long he was in there. I mean, officially it was like longer than a lifetime.
So that was the original intent, is that it was supposed to be longer than any man was supposed to have lived. That he's experienced in here. In one of the versions of the script, he would actually go downstairs to the library shelf inside like the bed and breakfast, and he would read a single page of a book on the shelf a day, and he would keep progressing because that was the only way he could keep track of time. Any mark he would make would disappear, but he could remember what was the last page that he read. And eventually, in that version of the script, he ran out. He had read everything on the shelf. And that was like, if you were to even take the average length of a book, or even just judge by how many pages could fit on that shelf, well over 100 years.
There's also the question of how long does it take to learn to play the piano like that from scratch?
Yeah.
Well, I think that I had heard from somebody they had done the math on the amount of time it'd take to get so good at everything and to memorize everything.
Yeah.
And somebody had guessed like about 1,500 years or something like that.
Yeah, it could be even that high. It's supposed to just be an unfathomable number. That's all you're supposed to know.
Imagine the knowledge that he walked out of that town with. Right? When he says, this is interesting, right? He basically walked out of that town with the knowledge of the universe and having lived potentially millennia for all we know. He says it early on in the movie, I'm a god. I don't think he knew how right he was.
So, what do you think of my whole my rule for Hollywood? Because I was thinking about making a video about it, and just
I think it's the same thing we all ultimately talk about. You just put it into a very nice compact sentence for us,
right?
But again, the problem isn't Hollywood knowing that. The problem is these people who are in charge of Hollywood having any touch with reality. And like you would have to burn the place to the ground and start from scratch, I think.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. I mean, we take it as a given that they want to please the fans, but no, there is no. That is not an impulse, and yet that should be the only thing. It isn't even an impulse in what the people do. When they're making these. I mean,
what happens when politics gets in there, when people resort to number crunching over everything else and no experience. And
you remember when
business people try to create art without knowing a thing about it.
When they were making G.I. Joe, right around the time that they were making,
it's why the indie scene has been and growing really. It's not just even recently. It's for the last several decades. Has been growing more and more, like with every decade.
Yeah.
We all go to some single person who made some cheap thing in his basement, and it's like it's more popular than the $500 million movie that just came out last week.
Right. See, the thing is with, like, I think I might have said this before. Remember when they were making G.I. Joe? And it was right around the time that they were making Captain America, and they said they called it the first Avenger because they thought that America was so unpopular due to the War on Terror that maybe they should just call it.
Sorry to interrupt, but Rhys, if you can hear me, I can't hear the stream again, and I'm wondering if that's the case for other people.
What now?
Is nobody hearing me?
I hear you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was just over here talking to an AI, the Leo AI, to ask about doing an estimate on the time it might take for Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
according to its guesstimations, they're looking at about 10 years.
Okay. Can I continue, or I mean, I don't
I'm
mean
sorry.
to interrupt. I don't. No, it wasn't you. It was Cartoonica said that. Oh, he's gone. He must have a technical problem.
Well, we were sick
Sorry.
of him anyway.
Well, anyway, so Captain America was called. They subtitled it the First Avengers, so that in some countries they could just call it the First Avenger, in case they didn't like the name Captain America.
Really?
So, oh yeah, and there's a couple countries that
for the next movie.
But the G.I. Joe was being developed around that same time, and the original announcements was that it was an international group based out of Brussels, and this is like that's their theme song is a real American hero. G.I. Joe is there, and they're like completely. It's like no, they're based out of Brussels, not even Americans. And
I would not trust an international group based out of Brussels. I mean, those guys need to be arrested immediately.
I'm just saying,
you can't
that
trust
was the
Belgium.
Plan. Yeah, it wasn't that bad when it came out, but that was what they were toying with around. I mean, they announced that the early announcements were that was what the thing was going to be about, and that first movie. I mean, the basic problem with it is they didn't call up Larry Hama and say, we will pay you to be an advisor so that we don't do this wrong, so that we do it so that it pleases all the people who like your comics and the cartoons and that were all based on your comics. And, he's the guy who came. I mean, they went to him with this, we're going to make a toy line. This guy is called Flame Wad. Come up with a backstory for him. He's like, okay. And it was great. It was like what he came up with was way better than, it was like he came up with stuff that made sense for these characters, and he made a comic book that really took kind of silly characters and made them a really good team. And, it's like it was a major success almost despite, how it was originally intended to just be we're going to sell toys thing, And it's like, why wouldn't you at least go to Larry Hama and say, what should we do,
Well,
and
the thing about this
but nobody wants to consult. Nobody really cares about pleasing the fans, like you said, like Cartoonica says. So
and
go ahead.
The thing, I agree with you 100% on that on one hand, but the other thing that I don't understand, and maybe this is me being an ugly American, because I mean both of those things are probably true. Anyway, so we might as well put them together. Anyway, but America is the global hegemon. Well, we invented blue jeans, and now they wear them everywhere.
Yeah.
There isn't a corner of this planet that's not impacted by American culture, for good or bad. And some people have an issue with it, but a lot of people don't. So I don't understand why you wouldn't just make it American. And it does well, and you know what markets they're gonna like it and which ones aren't, and just don't send them where they're not gonna like it.
Well, because again, unfortunately, like billion people in China, billion people in India, and
the Chinese like us more than they're allowed to admit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they also have their propaganda machine, and they're going to control every movie. It's like, oh, what's that? You said something nice about Taiwan. Nope, you don't get to be in our in our country now. There's $17 million you're going to miss out on, right? And so they control so much of Hollywood with an iron fist.
Yeah.
Come on, man. Iron Fist is not that popular.
It's sad because I really like Iron Fist.
What? Well,
it's sad. I like it. I think Iron Fist is one of the coolest heroes.
Character, but I'm just saying, like,
it's just nobody likes him.
It's niche. He's niche, man.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, come on. You're probably talking to the two biggest elongated man fans on the planet.
Probably the two only elongated.
Oh,
shows.
you beat me to it.
Mark Wade's here. I didn't know that.
Yeah, okay. There's
There's
a
three.
Small
There's
club.
a
I didn't
third,
realize
yeah.
that was a club with Mark Wade. That makes me
Well,
I want to rethink that.
I told him I was the biggest elongated man fan in the world. He said, "You're the second." So, yeah, I couldn't argue with that because, anyway,
because
yeah,
he'd start throwing phones at you.
I won't
Dude's
pretend
got
to
a
know what that
temper,
means. Okay. Oh,
Hey, Mark Wade, if you ever see this, I know you don't like me already. You don't even know me, and I know you don't like me.
well,
Are you saying he has
I hope
good
he doesn't
reason,
see.
or-
Yeah, I hope he doesn't dislike me. Because when I met him, I did I tell you about that? I'm sorry, I don't mean to repeat
I don't think
stories.
so.
Did
I've spent a lot of time bad mouthing friggin' a Kingdom Come though. So
Okay, yeah, that's
Oh,
true. That's
right.
true. But that was mostly an Alex Ross thing, you know. I mean,
no,
Yeah,
it's
no.
not.
Ross doesn't write, does he?
I understand why people don't like Alex. Why some people don't like Alex Ross's art. I still really like it.
mhm.
But I know Kingdom Come was mostly an Alex Ross thing. But the things I did not like about it were not. Yeah. Anyway.
When I was at the Minnesota Con, Spring Con, the big one, and Mark Wade was like around the corner from Eric Burnham and I, and so like just like elbows, you know, and I finally go around and talk to him, and I again mentioned, you know, biggest elongated man fan, and he said, "Oh, second biggest." So when you wrote 52, you like split up like who works on what. Like I could tell which stuff was Mark Wade's and which stuff was Keith Giffen's. I mean, it was really kind of obvious. And Mark Wade did all the elongated man plots along with some of the other stories. And so the elongated man, I don't know if do you remember 52, the weekly series?
I'm aware of it. I never follow it.
Okay.
I was already I was pretty jaded on what DC was doing at that time.
Okay.
So.
Well, in the whole thing is that over the course of the run, this is after Sue's been killed. Elongated Man in the first issue is putting a gun to his head, and he's about to pull the trigger, and he gets a phone call that tells him that Sue's grave has been defaced. And he puts the gun down. He goes and investigates. It leads him to a whole thing. This upside down Superman symbol has been painted on her grave, and that's like the symbol of resurrection in Kryptonian. And there is actually a storyline where her body has been like they've made a body out of wicker with her face taped to this cult of Kal-El. It's this cult that wants to bring Superboy back to life, and their first attempt is to bring Sue back to life, because as a nice thing for elongated man, they're going to bring Sue back to life first. And he gets Hal Jordan and Metamorpho and Green Arrow to come with him. Elongated Man does. Gets him to go investigate this group, says, all three of you have come back to life. So I want to know what you think of the possibilities here. Because it's not like it can't happen because you guys, you know. So it's like that he's actually pointing out what everybody points out, that you die in comic books, you always come back. So he's like, you know, what do you think? Is this going to happen? They're like, no, this is just nonsense. And a fire breaks out and is destroying the whole thing. And all of a sudden, the wicker Sue crawls out of the fire, talking to Ralph in Sue's voice, and then suddenly goes up in flames because it's made out of wicker. And it drives Ralph insane that something might be happening. Yeah. And he disappears from the story for a while. And when he's recovered, elongated man is like drinking out of a flask all the time. And he goes around wearing a trench coat, and he just looks beaten up by life. And he finds Dr. Fate's helmet. This is all elapsing over 42 issues. He finds Dr. Fate's helmet, and Dr. Fate's helmet teaches him magic over the course of week after week because he wants to learn magic to see if there is something to bring Sue back. And finally, they go to Dr. Fate's tower. Ralph puts on the helmet and shoots himself in the head with this gun because it turns out it's a magic gun. That's why he was going to do it. It's like a wish-granting gun. Shoots himself in the head and knocks the helmet off his head, and it turns into Felix Faust. The helmet of fate has not been fate at all. It's been Felix Faust who's trying to get him to do stuff. So they've done all these enchantments on the tower that they were going to do, and then they were trying to bring Sue back to life. And so I forget how he does it, but they bring, their whole reason was that Faust wanted to sacrifice Ralph to Neron. You remember him? Neron, the guy from Underworld Unleashed, who's like the Satan of the DCU. So Neron appears and is like, you wanted to trade him your soul, Ralph's soul for me, and yeah, you failed. You have to come with me, Felix. And he's like, no, please no. And he turns to Ralph and says, so did you want to offer anything? Is there anything you would like? And obviously getting him to try to, make a deal to get Sue back. And Ralph's like, no. And he's like, yeah, you don't have anything I want. And and so then they kill Ralph. Neron takes Ralph's wedding ring and throws it through his heart and kills him. And then he's like ready to leave and finds out that he can't leave because of the enchantments that only Ralph knows how to remove from the tower. And so he and Felix are trapped there forever. And that's how they leave the story. So I'm talking to Mark. I said, I kind of have a theory that issue 42 had a lot of editorial interference because it doesn't make sense. Because clearly, by trapping these two in the tower and Neron can't leave, Neron, who can bring Sue back to life, can only do it by bringing Ralph back to life and then saying, what do you want to let me out of here? And we know what Ralph wants. It's a way to bring Sue back, right? Otherwise, what is Ralph planning? What is Ralph's plan? Ralph is not dumb enough to do this without a plan. That's what I pointed out to Mark, and he's like, that was not what I wrote. That issue 42 was not, I had written a whole different thing. I'll send you the script. And I'm like, I would love to see that. And he says, just email me. I've emailed him numerous times, no response. So I don't know if he gets tons of mail. It could easily be lost. Maybe I just need to email him again. I don't know. I've always wanted to know what the real story was, because I know that Dan Didio, the thing that he did, he would rewrite stories after the artwork is done. He would rewrite stories because you can drag stuff around digitally. And so I mean, Chuck has talked about that from the brief time that he was back with DC. He said it is so different now because of that. And Dan Didio was heavily into rewriting people's stories. So I have no idea what was originally intended to bring Ralph back, but I would love to have seen it because that, what I'm saying, it's like, it makes sense if he has a plot. Ralph has to have a plot of what he's trying to do, and that story doesn't make sense. So, and that's how Ralph died and was gone for a decade until they brought him back with the New 52. So,
and wasn't there was some storyline where or was that just I can't remember. I thought I had heard something that that Sue and Ralph had been sort of ghost resurrected, like the Dead Boy Detective.
That was the last issue that Chuck wrote of Outsiders. Was that Ralph and Sue are basically, they have the dead man thing, where they can possess people's bodies, and then Ralph left, Chuck left. Chuck got fired. He had numerous scripts already written, so I don't know where he was planning to take them. I've actually sent him that question for Ask Chuck Dixon. I said, what was in those scripts? What were you going to do with Ralph and Sue? I'd love to know. I mean, it's completely irrelevant now, so I should think he'd be able to talk about it. But yeah, they come back. They talk to Alfred, in the guise of whatever people they're inhabiting. And then in that next issue, Ralph and Sue have taken over the bad guys, Gun Bunny and the gun guy.
Yeah. I can't remember his name right now.
I can't remember the one that has
Gun
the
Hawk.
flag head. Gun Hawk and Bunny. Gun Hawk and Gun Bunny. Ralph and Sue take them over, and they're like firing at the other bad guys from where they are, and he's like, "We're just trying to miss them, right?" And Sue's like, "We are? I didn't realize that." It was funny, but then that's the last you see of them. It's like Chuck left, somebody else took over, nothing happens with them. They're just gone. So yeah, you never see them again until the new 52 or whatever you call it, or the rebirth. Whenever Gail was able to bring them back.
That was in the new 52 in her
Secret Six.
Secret Six, which I hated that series so much.
I hated that they brought Ralph and Sue back, but they don't look like themselves. It's like Sue has brown hair and
themselves.
Yeah.
Like the idea that like Sue Dibney under any circumstances would ally herself in any way with Enigma. Come on.
Are we really calling him Enigma now?
The Riddler, fine. The Riddler take in that she was going for in Secret Six was way more crime boss and way less supervillain.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and
she was and I hated that series was just like one long sex joke. It was like an Amy Schumer special pretending to be a superhero comic. It was disgusting.
Yeah. Do you remember back when I did fanzine? Do you remember I actually did an Elongated Man story and it had the Riddler show up in it?
I think I remember that, but I don't remember. I remember it happening, but I don't remember the story.
Ralph is just overjoyed to have a villain for once, and the Riddler is like thrilled to be appreciated. He's like, "Wow, I actually have a hero who likes toying with me finally." Because he's like, he doesn't get that from Batman. So I don't know. It was kind of, that was more fun. It was more lighthearted than what Gail was doing with it. But I can't fault Gail because she did bring them back at least. You know, nobody else since she has left has cared about them.
Yeah.
They're just gone. I mean, they show up every now and then as whenever there's a group of detectives, they're in the mix, and that's all. You know. But they don't ever star or anything.
Did you not to just drastically change the subject off of Elongated Man per se, but did you read Gail's Plastic Man series at all?
No, I can't say I even knew that she did that.
I read the first 2 issues and I was really disappointed, and I just couldn't pick up the rest of it.
Gail Simone is an annoying, conflicting person.
It's a pretty infamous run
for me.
Yeah, when she was first doing Birds back in the early aughts, it was good.
Well, I learned to love how she writes Batgirl, for instance. But then, like other times, there's like, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I always thought it was weird that she introduced that plot line where Brainiac is taking over Oracle, and all of us in the Dixonverse way back then were saying, well, this is how they bring back Batgirl, right? And because I mean, what's a little loose connection between we've always said, in a world where there's Cyborg, why can't she be made to walk again? That you just need to reattach the little connections, and that's what nanotechnology, which is Brainiac, is all about. If he's actually inhabiting her body, he's going to want to say, well, we'll fix all these wires up, and she's walking again. You'd think. At least I thought that's why they were doing that, and she was actually baffled that we thought that was a possibility. Either that, or she was feigning it because that's what she was planning. I don't know. But
well, and then the thing is at the time when that happened, it was I remember reading a CBR article about it, interview with her about it, and she said that she could definitely understand why people would want to fix Batgirl and why that makes sense in a superhero universe. I mean, like, why would anybody be paraplegic in a superhero universe? But for the sake of representation, it's important to, I think, keep, Oracle as she is and to show that she can be okay with herself in that position.
Mm-hmm.
And
You mean
like,
representation of handicapped people?
representation of handicapped people.
Sure. Yeah.
I get that.
Like, I guess. Because I mean, like that seems weird to me. Because like, I don't think that I mean, if people are people, so like if you define yourself by your handicap, then
Right.
you got worse problems than a funny book.
Yeah.
But that's part of my take on it. The other thing about it is, like, I think the reason to keep Oracle as Oracle and to keep her paraplegic is not because of representation, but because Barbara Gordon is a far more compelling character.
Yes.
She has more to offer. You give her her backpack and she just becomes a weak, lame, ineffectual Batman.
Yes.
She's just a Batman, who's out of commission, like 5 days a month.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
I think she was far better as Oracle.
She's far better as Oracle. Far better as Oracle. 100% better. And
also way. When they healed her, they made her younger. I never got that. Suddenly she's. It's not that
that because with the New 52 rebooted things,
right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like. But even what did they do that before the New 52? Wasn't she up and about? I don't remember. It seems like forever. But they anyway. The I think she's far more interesting as Oracle.
Yeah,
I don't doubt that she is. I can get behind it, and I understand why people feel that way. I can't help, like, I like Batgirl. I like redheaded teenage Barbara Gordon.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's fine. But everybody grows up. I mean,
Oracle
Oracle
isn't an action figure for a toy, though. They've never made an action figure for Oracle.
I was going to say is that if they wanted Oracle to be a character, or in this case, if Gareth Simone wants her to be, representative of people in a wheelchair, this feels like the whole, don't make Superman black, make a new black character and make them interesting, right? Don't take this character who's already been established as one thing and try to shove them a round peg in a square hole.
Yeah. Well, the thing about it is like the only reason we have Oracle in a wheelchair as a character is because.
Don't remind me.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying it was like she was cast away, or like they had written a story. The Batgirl special had written a story to write her into the sunset, so there just would never be another Batgirl story again. And then the friggin' Killing Joke.
Yeah.
And then that was it. So Jerry Ordway brought her back and reinvented the character. Not Jerry Ordway.
Yeah.
Damn it.
You mean you're talking about in Suicide Squad?
Yes.
Well, yeah.
I can't remember the author's name for a second. Oh my god.
Ostrander. John Ostrander.
John Ostrander. I got his initials right.
Yeah.
That's the guy you were saying is the only person qualified to write Suicide Squad, right?
Yeah.
Well, Amanda Waller. Yeah.
Yeah. Ostrander created Oracle.
Mm-hmm.
And rehabbed the character, and it was just, I mean, then a ton of people were able to write really super interesting and compelling stories with Barbara Gordon. Where the number of people that write super interesting and compelling stories with, fun teenage Barbara Gordon was like 6, and 2 of those are Chuck Dixon.
Yeah. Most of the Superman family stuff with Batgirl isn't really worth republishing. Except as an oddity. It's not great stuff. I agree with you. I never saw a Batgirl story where I was like, this is really good, because Batgirl's really a really good character. It's like, without Batman, she wouldn't exist. And it's.
Well, and I mean, and like, Dixon and Beatty's, wasn't it Dixon and Beatty did Batgirl Year 1?
Yeah. Yeah.
That was excellent. Excellent.
Well, it's the same.
And then there were a couple of Batgirl stories that were retroactive that were in Batman Chronicles series that ran in the late 80s, early aughts, late 90s, early aughts, that were interesting. you know. But by and large, they're just not that good. And even the ones that were really good that were being written then, Barbara Girl and Batgirl stories. The reason they're good is because they're written with this eye of future tragedy in them. So they've got this pregnant moments that are in the story.
Yeah.
About how her life's going to change. And so you have this fleetingness that's written within the context of it.
Gosh, I sure do like legs. Yeah. Isn't it great having feet to walk around on? Yeah.
For me, it comes down to the whole. It's always been my issue of just not liking Batman as a character in general. Like, Bruce Wayne is just not a good guy, and he gets annoying with his brooding and seriousness. And I basically find myself liking the entire Bat family better than Bruce. And so it's going to be the same with many Robin characters. It's just like just about any of these characters are a nicer, more fun, lighthearted version of the same thing. Mm-hmm. I like Robin better than Batman because he's a better version of Batman. And I gotta prefer Barbara as Batman as well in that sense.
Yeah.
Batman has become kind of Flanderized, though. I mean,
I know.
He wasn't like that. I mean,
I don't go back to the 1940s, so
Well, I told you before about reading the Obia Man, the story that killed off Tim Drake's mom and paralyzed his dad. Mm-hmm. That when I read that story in the trade paperback, it was baffling because it's like Bruce is like really worried and like and emoting, and he's like very concerned about Tim, and it's like all this stuff I've gotten so used to reading about how he doesn't care about anybody and he's cold and he's and it's like, wow, I have completely forgotten that this is how Batman was written back in the 80s.
Oh yeah,
the early 90s.
And the 80s and 90s, and it wasn't until I'm gonna try to remember his name.
Yeah, but it's even after Arkham Asylum and Killing Joke. It's like
right. No, there's a particular writer, and I'm trying to remember his name right now. And he came on after Cataclysm, and they threw a bunch of stuff at him.
Rucka?
Rucka.
No, Rucka was it? Greg Rucka?
Yeah, I think so. I think it was Rucka. And
is it Rucka?
I've been
saying Rucka all this
time. I've never heard it said. I've never heard it said out loud. So I've only ever read it on the page. Sure, Rucka. This makes sense. But it seemed to be a lot of time after. I'm not necessarily saying it's him, but that was when I think that shift started happening, right? And you had Bruce Wayne Murderer and some of those other events, and like they kept moving the ideas of Batman as a whole person, and they just kept getting shoved to the side more and more. And Rucka had written some really compelling mystery stuff that I remember reading and really, really enjoying. But like, Batman was a cipher in the stories, which is fine because you're reading about the mystery. It doesn't matter. I don't necessarily care how it impacts him. But you even get to like the Hush, right? And and I need to go back and reread Hush, but man, I just couldn't stand Hush. The whole story, none of it made any sense, and none of the character interactions made any sense. And I thought that the mysteries were contrived and forced, and I thought the art was mid. Because Jim Lee is an amazing draftsman, but not a good compositionist, I don't feel. He makes good drawings and bad comics. That's the hot take for the day, kids.
I'm so glad to hear somebody else say that that Jim Lee isn't the be all and end all of great comic book art. Because
I think his covers are great, but I really dislike so much of Hush. I need to go back and reread it again, just because.
But he's not a great designer either. Remember, he redesigned everybody's costumes for the New 52.
Yeah, those all suck.
Yeah, way too many lines, way too many little tidbits on everybody's
And I mean,
costumes, and
like it's like the Flash design, right?
Mhm.
Right? Like with his Batman design, some of the little lines seem like seams, and it's like, okay, sure, it's it's tactical, it's supposed to be space age materials. You're gonna see some seams, that's fine. But
Mhm.
the Flash's design, it ought to be sleek, man.
Yeah.
It's one line, it's that contour, and
Mhm.
like that's it, man. He's supposed to look like Speed. He's not supposed to look like he's wearing armor.
Yeah. And but when you add that much detail, you remember you have to draw that every time you draw that character. And it's one of Chuck Dixon had this like the first time I ever heard him speak. He was doing a piece. It was kind of his thing that he would do at every convention, the 10 commandments of comic book writing. And one of them was think of your artist and the fact that they have to draw what you have written.
Right.
And he said, you start with a far off shot of a floating city with a dome, and it's flying in space above a desert. Panel 2, zoom in a little bit. Panel 3, same thing, zoom in a little bit. It's like you're making them redraw the domed city every time. That's why so many people now use SketchUp and zoom in a little bit and trace over it, because people want that cinematic zoom in thing. He said that one of his storylines, he had like Black Canary riding a motorcycle, and the motorcycle is in every panel, and the comic book artist is like, do you know how hard it is to draw all the parts of the motorcycle? It's easy if it's a far off shot and you're just doing a silhouette of a motorcycle, but you've got she's taking it on a boat, she's going up the steps with it, and I have to draw a motorcycle over and over again in every panel. It's like, it's a lot to draw. And he was like, I was rightfully chastened, because I was not thinking about that when I had the motorcycle in every panel. And it was that's when you have this overly ornate look for every character, and it's what you call on model. It's how Garcia Lopez did the model sheets for all the characters and says, draw them like this. This is the on model for DC Comics. And if Jim Lee is doing that, then to be on model, you have to draw the Flash with all those little middling parts, or Superman with all the ornate armor. Why does he have armor? But it's now armor, and it's in every panel, and you have to draw it like that in every panel. And there's a reason why, it's just a big patch of blue and the and the chevron. It's you can do a basic Superman pretty easily, but not if the costume has been redrawn that way. And all of his designs are like that. Wow, we're really all over the place with our topic.
Yes, yeah.
It's a chill stream. That was
well, that's the point. We're just talking
about. I do want to say one thing before we get too further, and farther ahead, and I can't. I'm insulted here, okay? I come on tonight and I say that Star Wars wasn't any good and that Indiana Jones 4 wasn't bad. And that's the hot take of the night?
I think we had several.
How the
You were expecting to set the internet on fire?
I think we've had lots of hot takes today, frankly.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh, sure.
I'd have to go back and re-listen to it, but I'm pretty sure that everybody in the audience and all of their family and friends would have been insulted at one point. I mean, the metal doesn't even like.
You're just trying to make me feel better.
I forgot the name of it. Bedtime Stories.
Bedtime Stories? Adam Sandler's worst film? What are you talking about?
Yeah, no.
I haven't seen that. I need to see it. So.
Oh, man. It's one of those movies that makes you think.
I might like it better now, honestly, but I saw it in theaters with my cousin. He came all the way from New Jersey. Every time he comes into town, he just wants to watch a movie. I guess that's the thing that we do together. I don't know when that was decided. It just was. And he chose Bedtime Stories, which was like new in the theaters at the time. And
How old were you?
There was nothing about the theater going experience that made it not enjoyable. You know, like everybody was polite. It was just a normal experience. But I walked out of there just perplexed and disappointed.
So how old were you?
I'm trying to remember. I think it was in high school.
Okay. So here's my thought about why you may not have liked it. And you might like it better now, you might not. The story is about two things. It's about being young, and it's about being old and realizing that you're not young anymore. Right?
Yeah, I kind of picked that part up. Yeah.
Right. But
Yeah.
like, I don't think you like can necessarily live into all of that. Because like it very much is a movie made for like parents and their children. Right?
Yeah.
And
Really?
you
'Cause
with
they
your
made
high
it
school aged
plot-
cousin. you maybe you're not the
Well,
author.
apparently he loved it. He thought the movie was great.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's fine, but I'm just
Yeah.
saying, like the pair of you together, it's not necessarily like a bro thing. So it's not like
Mhm.
It may
Plus-
not be a teenager's movie the
Yeah.
way that
so
like
like
a lot of his early
I am
stuff.
exaggerating. I can think of a few Adam Sandler movies that I dislike more than that, like Jack and
Oh, I can
Jill
think of
or
plenty.
Yeah, I
of
was-
them.
I was-
Necessarily
Yeah.
love
I was
them.
thinking.
Yeah, no, I could think of a few of them off the top of my head, but
Well,
Yeah,
it's
the
definitely
reason he
down
would-
at the bottom of the pile with
The
Waterboy,
reason he
I
would
thought
never
was
do
worse.
Jonah as a movie
Waterboy
is
is
you'd
one of
never
his
be able
best
to
movies. What are you
you'd
talking
never be able to
about?
get in the Coke and the Subway ads, and where do you put those in a Jonah movie? That's why he'd never do it.
Yeah.
And
Except you realize that an Adam
and where would he
Sandler
go on
movie
vacation to
doing
film
Jonah-
it?
No, I don't think you realize that if Adam Sandler does a Jonah movie, it is totally going to be a spoof movie, which means they would totally be getting their Coca-Cola ads in there however they have to.
Yeah. Also, he'd totally do it because he doesn't care as much about the ads. What he cares is being able to take all of his friends on vacation with him.
Right.
And because you'd have to shoot the Jonah movie on site, there'd be an ocean trip,
in the Mediterranean.
Mhm.
Mediterranean. Like, yeah, they would do it. They
They're
would
gonna
make
film
a
it
whole
in
vacation
Joppa.
of it.
Why not?
So
Fizz
when
says
they're
I
doing when they're doing the boat scene, what you don't see is that the reverse shot is the cruise line that they have parked
Yeah.
nearby for everybody to be on.
It might
Yeah.
not even be. Yeah. So, yeah, Pixels. Liking Pixels, unironically, that's
I
that's
still
my
need to
Fizz.
see that. I would
I
like
did not
to.
like Pixels.
I didn't like
no.
Pixels either.
But I mean, I liked some things about Pixels. I didn't like the premise of Pixels. Like,
Mhm.
I wish in Pixels, instead of being a save the world movie, I wish it was just actually a movie about video games
Yes.
yeah.
and tournaments.
You know,
right?
Yeah.
And
The
like,
short that it is based on is so much better than
Yeah.
the movie that they tried to make sense of it. And it's like they put the tape of him winning onto a space shuttle thing and or whatever and put it off into space, and aliens found it, and it's like none of that makes sense. It again and again it doesn't
Yeah.
go
I
by
mean, to be
those
fair, the
rules.
story
It doesn't
was
work.
done better like a decade before that in a one-off short bit of Futurama. So
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
The Last Starfighter.
yeah.
So
That was actually something that Riff Tracks commented on, was that they said that the Pixels movie will not be able to live up to the 8 minutes of Futurama that did it
Yeah.
even better. Yeah.
and I mean, there were stuff about it. Like a lot of the special effects were like really top level. So there's some
Mhm.
stuff that was really enjoyable with it. But I didn't hate it, but I definitely wasn't my favorite. But I did not like it as much as Bedtime Stories, but I think I liked it better than Little Nicky.
And see, I think Little Nicky is his magnum opus.
See, there you go.
Yeah,
Hmm.
No, man, Wedding Singer is way better than Little Nicky.
it's up there for sure.
Yeah.
Am I the only Transylvania fan here?
The Hotel Transylvania.
Yes,
I think
sorry.
as far as like a family movie, the first one's all right.
I have a really mixed feeling about Hotel Transylvania
Yeah.
because I really don't care for the story.
I don't particularly like it, but I can see why it's good.
the animation is really good and the voice acting is really good, but I did not care for the story.
Oh,
And not
I
the
love
premise
that
of the
part it,
story,
particularly
like the premise of like, you know,
It's the
Dracula's
execution.
daughter and the normal kid like that. I didn't mind. Actually, I liked the bones of it, but I didn't like the way they put it together.
Yeah.
I say I love how it comes down to, you know, the backstory of how he lost his wife, and so he's
Yeah, no, I
actually
think
the one who's
like I said, like
developed this
I like the bones. I
prejudice.
don't like the way it came together. It's like, I can't remember the Oh, actually, it's very much like Avengers Endgame, where I feel like it was. There are moments in Endgame that aren't terrible, but the sum is less than. But the movie is less than the sum of its parts.
Yeah. There's the second one, Hotel Transylvania 2.
I don't
couldn't
think
care.
any of the sequels are any good.
He's trying to teach the kid to fly, and he shoves him off a very tall tower, and you hear him falling forever.
Yeah.
He says, "Don't worry, he's going to fly. Just wait." And it's like, it's really good comedic timing. It's like, that's a really good bit within a movie. You know, every now and then there's like, it's
I
like
don't.
the timing on that is really good.
I didn't like any of the sequels. Just that first one.
I honestly thought the third one had a pretty good story, but they're all kind of middling.
It
none
is
of them
weird
are great, none
that
of them are terrible.
yeah, it might have been somewhat better than the second one in some ways. I get what you mean. It's weird when you can say that about what is basically Beetlejuice Goes Hawaiian.
Yeah.
Right? It's like we're already sinking this low. How dare you have an okay story to it?
You know, that was the pitch for the second Beetlejuice movie for the longest time.
Yeah,
Beetlejuice Goes
right.
Away. Okay, yeah, okay, good. By the way, we were talking about Gail Simone. I should mention that I do like her Rose and Thorn miniseries. Which did not do well at all and will never get reprinted because of that. It's like they have to succeed as a miniseries to get published. And it's like, I think it would work so much better as a trade if they would put it out that way. But
maybe I'll have to seek that out because I really like the Rose and Thorn characters.
Yeah.
And
she did a really good job of kind of taking a new take on the fact that she's crazy.
Okay.
And not and yet it still works. So
is it the modern age Rose and Thorn?
Yes,
okay.
not Golden Age. Yeah.
Okay. I mean the same premise either way, but
yeah, it is. Yeah.
Okay, no, that's interesting. I'd be curious to check that out. I've always found the Rose and Thorn character to be intriguing concept. A
person who doesn't know that they're a superhero, and they
or
don't have
or a villain, either way around it. You know, they're in that middling category where, you know, their motives may be right, but their actions might not be. So anyhow, well, that's more than a show, guys. Next week we'll be back with I don't know. There's a meme we were going to talk about that we just never got around to.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Yeah,
no,
you wanted
fine.
to talk about the meme. Oh,
that's fine.
It might be too late next week, though.
Who knows? Well, that's fine. I love talking.
I've never heard of it. I've just
been seeing it the last couple days.
It's a Twitter trend, so who knows if it'll last.
So, maybe it's not worth talking about.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, the Metal has dropped a link for his Realms and Relics comic.
Yeah, because I know none of you have bought it, so you should all go and get yourself
true.
a copy.
I should buy it because it'll look good on the shelf. Although, also JD Vance. No, it's not the JD Vance meme. Those are pretty fire though. So, also, people might notice. You can't actually see it on here. EV, something that shows up in the chat. Joy Waller was a real name. Just released a series called The One Place You Can Go, or a comic over on our website site. I will probably try to put that in the description later. This is a different book of hers, Ground Cry. This one's a very sad horror story. But she's the one who does all the graphics that we had in our thumbnail, all the little image icon images, throw her some love. Anyway, that's like I said, I'll put that in the description later, and we're gonna call it because I am tired.
Yeah. Go see a working man. Go see a working man on the 28th of this month.
Oh yeah,
put it on your calendar.
Yeah,
28th. Yeah,
Sly Stallone and Jason Statham, and based on a book by Chuck Dixon.
Yeah, and directed by now I'm blanking on his name, the beekeeper guy who just worked with Statham. This is like their next project together. So
I can't remember the guy's name either. Anyway, later. Show's over. Bye. Go home.
Bye.
Get out of here. Love y'all. What are you doing?